Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker. We have a really fun show for you today. It's someone that I met recently, and we were able to connect. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Natalie, you've been listening to the show for a while?
I have, yes.
Yes, and really fun always when people reach out that have been listening to the show. Natalie is the marketing and communications manager at Discover Kalispell, Montana. And Natalie, what a beautiful place to be from.
It is truly, I feel blessed every single day. I say it's like living in a postcard.
Absolutely. You know, after you and I chatted, I had seen pictures of Kalispell. I've actually never made it up there myself. And then I went and did some research after the fact, and it's like, holy cow, it's even prettier than I imagined. And so it's really fun to be able to chat with you. Maybe someday we'll have to do this in person at your destination.
Absolutely. We would love to have you.
Awesome. Well, Natalie, as a listener of the show, you know that there's a couple questions I like to ask at the beginning, and I would love to know for you, and man, being where you're from, and you're also very well traveled yourself, this might be a hard one, but what's your dream destination? If you could go anywhere in the world, not Kalispell, where would it be?
Sure. Me and my sisters have always wanted to go to Rio de Janeiro. It's been a dream of ours. I think that it would be an amazing place to visit. We were totally inspired by the movie Rio, even as corny as that might sound. But yeah, that is definitely on the docket for a sister's trip in the future.
Awesome. So you and your sisters, and you know, it's kind of funny because so many of us have different destinations that kind of stand out to us. The fact that it was the movie Rio and being a cartoon, what was it about that movie that said, okay, me and my sisters have to go there?
Oh, the liveliness of it all, the music, Carnival. I feel like they're all bucket list, but you know how funny that, like you said, a cartoon made it feel super approachable and is something. So I think that's something I love about working in destination marketing myself, right? You never know what is going to inspire that next trip in somebody.
Yeah. Does anybody speak Portuguese in your sister's group?
No, that's going to have to be also on the to-do list as well prior to the trip. So
If you need an all expense paid translator, I actually speak Portuguese, so I can guide you all along on your trip.
great, there we would love to have you.
Awesome. Any idea timeline wise when this is going to happen, or is it still kind of a dream?
Oh, this is a dream. I think we it'll take a little bit of planning considering we're a little bit global, but we'll get there one day.
Awesome. Awesome. I hope you do. Brazil's a pretty incredible place. You probably know this from listening. I spent 2 years there, and just the people are probably the best part. Like I built some pretty incredible relationships in Brazil and love the people. Let's talk about a travel memory, maybe a place you have been. What's a memory that stands out to you?
Yeah. Is it corny to talk about your own destination a little bit through that?
Yes, that's cheating.
Okay, that's fair. I did recently go to Italy with my sister, and Tuscany was a place that totally stood out to me. I think I find it, especially considering where I live as well, I'm really attracted to wide open spaces. And Tuscany, just wow, I was totally blown away with the wine, the people. Yeah, and I would hope to also go back there one day.
Sounds like you and your sisters are pretty close.
The sisters are close, absolutely.
How
Family
many are
trouble.
there?
I am one of four, two sisters and a brother.
Two sisters and a brother. Okay, so my family makeup with my kids, I've got three girls and a little boy. So it would be so cool for me if they ended up traveling together. And sounds like you and your sisters have done that. And I can't imagine something that would be more gratifying for me as a dad.
Oh, I was going to say my mom loves it. Every time she hears of a new trip, I feel like there's tears in her eyes. So
Oh, that's so cool. So you went to Italy with your sister, and any crazy experiences out there?
I'm going to think for a second. I probably should have prepped this one a little bit better.
You're fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I think just honestly shocked about the amount of stairs we had to do. Maybe that was something I should have accounted for. So just being out of breath was something that I feel like, wow, I wish maybe I had practiced a little bit more. But, it just in general, it was a very relaxing place, and it totally made you just feel at peace.
So you need a rigorous physical training schedule if you're going to get ready for Italy.
Yeah, I think so. I would definitely recommend hitting the stairs a few times.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, let's learn about you, Natalie. You have an interesting background. In fact, one of the things that really kind of stood out to me when we had our prep call for this is how many different places you've lived and how those different places that you've lived have kind of played into preparing you for the role that you're in now. So give us kind of an overview of your background and what led you to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated from Syracuse University in 2019, and I was a member of the women's lacrosse team there. And lacrosse was something that you'll kind of find throughout my story has sparked a lot of why I visited certain places. But immediately after college, I did end up moving to Hawaii. So I took full advantage of that remote working situation, spent 6 months in Waikiki, and then from there, I was missing my mountains. So to Denver, I went. I feel like I have a little bit of whiplash sometimes in terms of my landscape. So then it brought me a little bit all around Florida for the last 2 years. And then now I'm finally in Kalispell where I plan to make some long term roots. But as I had mentioned, I had actually visited Kalispell one summer in college. I spent one summer coaching lacrosse all around the state of Montana, and I vividly remember Kalispell. It really stopped me in my tracks. So when this job lined up, it kind of felt like the stars were aligning a bit.
Wow. So, okay, just to recap for everyone, New York, Hawaii, Denver, Florida, and now Kalispell. That next stop Puerto Rico, it sounds like.
Yeah, you know what? Throw it my way. We'll see.
Well, that's so great. Tell me a little bit about some of the roles that you had that prepared you for a marketing role at Visit Kalispell, because I think yes, you lived all those places, but your professional experience really played into how you ended up at Kalispell as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a little bit of experience working at an SEO agency, and then a majority of my career prior to my current role was actually within the social media management realm. And this was from all different industries, all different size companies and clients. And really, I fell in love with just being able to connect with an audience. And it was something that I think I didn't realize even at all these places that I had lived that I had actually been following DMOs on Instagram. I think it's one of those things people don't really realize, right? Necessarily. We're still working on that story of what essentially a DMO does, right? But it was really cool when I
Yeah.
got my foot in the door in this industry, how much I had actually utilized DMO services without even realizing it. So in some ways, a little bit of like unsung heroes when it comes to even the locals and residents that live in certain places.
Great. And then how did you actually end up working at the DMO at Visit Kalispell?
Yeah, so I was coming here regardless.
Or did I say Visit Kalispell? Excuse me, Discover Kalispell. That's on me.
No worries, Discover Kalispell. Yeah, I had actually already, made the decision that I'd be moving to Montana and was looking for a full reset. So it just so happened the job lined up and talked to Diane, who's our executive director here, and kind of pitched the idea of I have this marketing background, maybe not in the DMO space specifically, but I do think with my own mind, having that visitor like experience for the first few years you live somewhere, hopefully could provide Discover Kalispell with some fresh perspectives.
Yeah, I love that. And I love talking to people who have come from outside of the industry and got in kind of not just their first entry level job in their career, but had gone and built some experience elsewhere and bring some of that experience into the industry. Because what I find is those are the people that come in and say, wait, why are we doing this way? And they start to change the some of the deeply ingrained things that have always been done in a DMO. So I'm curious, when you got there, what were some of the things that made you ask the question, wait a second, why are we doing it this way?
Sure. Yeah, for me, and maybe it's a generational preference or perspective that I have. But one thing I really immediately want to implement was more video footage within our marketing. I think we're kind of course, seeing that trend across the board as data is showing. But again, working in other industries where it felt like, a little bit harder to gather interesting video content. I felt like as a DMO, we're a shoe-in with where we live. Why aren't we kind of showcasing this and really letting our visitors or potential visitors experience our place, from a screen, right, beforehand?
Yeah. So immediately you're like, we need more video.
Yeah, it was
What
definitely a
else?
main focus.
Awesome. What else stood out to you?
um, I think that another part, and potentially we'll touch on this a little bit more, was just overall how we talk about our recreate responsibly messaging. And I think that is also due to me being new to the area and needing to rely on that messaging myself, right? And understand a little bit some of the unique challenges that come along with living in an area like Northwest Montana, and some of, the things that we have to consider versus other destinations and places.
Yeah, and I definitely want to dive into that. I think before we do, um, when you and I had our prep call, one of the things that I found really interesting is a benefit that you had coming from outside the industry and outside Montana was you really got to kind of experience the destination as a visitor and kind of personally go on several of the excursions and activities and really try it out like a visitor. What are some of the things that you learned in going through that process?
It was pretty cool to understand. I guess a good example would be that I had some family in town, so we, on our own, decided to book one of the snowmobile tours, right? So if you're not a skier, it's one of the next big, attractions to do in the winter here, given our ample amount of snow. But I felt like it gave me a really cool understanding of what it, as somebody who's coming here, how amazing some of our outfitters and guides are, right? Maybe also some of the challenges. Maybe, oops, we need to tweak this blog to be a bit more clear, to talk about some of the signage to make sure they can find it, right? We're up in the mountains, and if this is a visitor's first time recreating in an area like this might not be inherently as, you know, um, first nature to them. So that was really interesting. And then secondly, just having inherently a really quick and deep connection with a lot of our business owners, as we are a branch of the Kalispell Chamber of Commerce. It's been pretty cool to also just touch base with them and find out what their needs are. And then working really closely with those tourism and hospitality partners as well.
Great. And do you feel like as you went on some of those experiences, did it change the way you felt like you needed to market the destination?
Oh, absolutely. I think in some ways, right, but also in some ways, no. I think if anything, it gave me a perspective of, okay, what would have been helpful for me to see prior to maybe going on these experiences, or visiting the lake or what have you. But then secondly, really honoring what Kalispell is as a destination. So for us, that's our people. It's that authenticity is really what drives a lot of people to our area. A little bit rougher around the edges mountain town. So also kind of striking that balance of coming in and having fresh ideas, but also knowing that you want to honor the destination and the place that you're actually promoting.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that you did that. I think for a lot of people, they come in and have a tendency to market to themselves without fully experiencing the destination as a visitor. And that's another benefit that you get from coming from the outside is even though, yes, you're working for the DMO, you get the opportunity to experience it for the first time like a visitor does. And I think for some of the destination lifers, the people that kind of were born and raised in a destination, get a little bit blind to some of those experiences and the nuance of some of those experiences. And it's cool you had the opportunity to do that.
Definitely. And still hoping for some more as well. I'll never
Yeah.
turn down an opportunity.
Well, and I guess that's a good point because it's going to take you quite some time to be able to experience everything Kalispell has to offer, especially with the national parks nearby. And yeah, what a great place to experience everything like a first timer, right?
Certainly. I think I had to get, what did they say, maybe 10 years under my belt before I can truly call myself a looker. So yeah, I'll definitely have some time to try out some new things.
I love it. Well, I do want to dive into because I think one of the things that you guys have done a really good job of and have focused on is this sustainability messaging. And there's a lot of, I would say, quicksand around this topic. For one, I think there's a lot of, and I may offend some people when I say this, but there's a lot of, I would say, laziness in the over tourism messaging that I think a lot of times people will attribute to over tourism what is actually a lack of visitor distribution and a lack of promotion of some of the ancillary attractions and resources that visitors may want to get to. And so sometimes I dislike the over tourism moniker for that reason. And then there's another problem, and that's that when a lot of us want to have the sustainability messaging, instead of communicating effectively with the audience, we kind of talk down and condescend to the audience a little bit. And I've got another show that I do called Destination Discourse. And one of the episodes that we did, we actually highlighted what Barcelona had done with their sustainability messaging. And the way they did it was almost like, if you violate this, there will be punishment. And I really didn't like the tone that they took with the visitors. I think there's a way to communicate sustainability while putting yourself on the same team with the visitor. It's like, if you love this place when you come, let's preserve it so that more people can love this place for the long term. And I think you guys have done a pretty good job of that. So I'd love to have you maybe give us a little bit of an overview of why is sustainability messaging important to you guys, and how have you gone about making sure that you don't fall into some of the quicksand around this topic?
Sure. I think first and foremost, as a DMO, one of our main pillars is always going to be stewards of our community. And for us, nature and our outdoors are a large part of that, both for visitors and residents alike. So I'll speak a little bit to a campaign that was launched in 2022. And this whole overarching campaign idea was treat it like grandma's house. I think one of the things that resonated with me, because of course this was before my time at Discover Kalispell, was when you read that line, you kind of inherently, it evokes a certain feeling without that talking down to ness that you alluded to prior. And again, it kind of just was about this idea of your grandmother doesn't like a messy house, neither does Montana, and really taking more of that, soft scolding in a way, but truly kind of leaning in and making fun. We did some really fun videos, with a grandma-like character, as if your grandma is really sitting here talking to you and teaching you things about, what are fire restrictions and bear spray and all of these really specific and a lot of times safety, components that our visitors really do need to know. And again, this was birthed out of an influx of visitors that we had in 2021 and 2022. So there was a lot of pressure on our national parks and people recreating. So it was something that, we had to act a little bit fast. But, I was really, really drawn to that messaging, even as somebody who came in a little bit after it. I think it really resonates as well with our locals.
Yeah, so the grandma's house is such a fascinating use case that you guys had, because if you really think about the relationship most of us have with our grandparents, and of course there's exceptions, and there's also people that don't remember their grandparents or didn't have them around, right? But those that did, grandma is really interesting, because grandma has the ability to get away with saying things that mom and dad could never get away with, right? It's the generation gap. Like, we're going to give her a pass, right? So you almost have permission, if you're comparing it to grandma's house, to maybe say things you couldn't say otherwise. I also feel like grandma may have different rules than you're accustomed to, and when you're in grandma's house, you'll obey those rules out of respect for her. And so grandma, in a lot of cases, is a very non-threatening yet kind of authority figure that people don't want to cause problems for. And so when you really kind of dive into the emotional connection that most of us have with our grandma, positioning yourself and comparing yourself as a destination to grandma's house, I think it's a really smart move, because it's very endearing and gives you permission to, like I said, maybe get away with some things that you wouldn't be able to just come out and say without kind of putting yourself in the grandma position.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on with that. And, again, we also saw that need to cut through some of the white noise that was just this general recreate responsibly. And we really wanted people to actually stop and listen to what we had to say, right? Because it is important information, but we know that it also can be a lot, as you're planning a trip or visiting and with the changes that just inherently come seasonally in a place like ours.
So what were some of the things that, because I feel like we've illustrated the concept really well, right? Like, people understand that our sustainability message was treat it like grandma's house. What were some of the actual things that you guys said, maybe from a copy standpoint? Like, what were you asking people to do? Is this not to litter on the trails? Is this, tell me a little bit about what you actually asked in your ads.
Okay, so I think a good one, knowing that wildland fires is something that is, particularly in the summer and warmer months, a huge, huge consideration for us to accurately teach our visitors about, knowing that a majority of the fires are actually human, coming from humans. It's really important for us to share that information. So you actually have grandma going out in videos correctly teaching you how to, put out your fire correctly, and, what to do to ensure that it really is put out completely and well, and the type of supplies that you need. And again, it's done in a lovingly, jokingly way, but really does get that message across. As I mentioned, a majority of wildland fires actually coming from humans. So really working to take a serious issue, but kind of educate in a more fun and playful way.
Yeah, I love that. Anything else from that campaign you want to highlight?
I mean, I think definitely linking to some of the funny ones that she said about our water safety as well. So again, making sure you're wearing your life vest, and yeah, really, it's just to don't disappoint grandma, right?
Yep. Yep. Be careful. Grandma would definitely say there. Um, I'm curious, from a tactical distribution standpoint with visitors in market, your media plan is going to look a little bit different, and maybe they're not in the planning phase, so maybe they're not going to see your social media content. Or so tell me a little bit about how you made sure that this message of sustainability and treat it like grandma's house, how did you put it in front of the visitor?
Sure. So we actually don't do paid promotion in the summertime, given the busyness for the parks. So this was a unique way for us to actually lean a bit more into paid advertising without it being maybe our traditional encouragement to get people to the area. So again, this is through our newsletters, print, really across the board. We were hitting home that treat it like grandma's house messaging. So anywhere we could share it, we really were. And again, it was one of those unique instances that we felt we could, communicate a little bit more in the summer than when we're typically a little bit more hesitant or careful about what we're pushing out.
Great. And did your campaign, from a consistency perspective, did it look differently on organic social than it did on your newsletter or in paid ads? Tell me tactically how you made sure everything was kind of consistent.
Yeah. So of course we had our videos that featured the same grandma actress, but additionally we did have the token messaging being that treat it like grandma's house, as well as a little grandma icon, right? So when we couldn't do the video first, you still had that consistent look and feel and that grandma like energy. And again, depending on the print, there were some spinoffs, like I think I had mentioned. Your grandma doesn't want a messy house, neither does Montana. So kind of a little bit of sub messaging depending on where we were actually advertising, but again, completely laddering up to the main goal of the campaign.
I love that. And with this kind of a campaign, you really have to have a good connection with your local business stakeholders and have really solid relationships with them so that they can be on board with this messaging. Because if you're telling everyone to recreate responsibly, but nobody else in the destination is, the message kind of falls flat. And you told me about how Diane, your director, had built a program essentially during COVID to have a consistent kind of touch point with the business stakeholders. Tell me a little bit about that program and how it's evolved.
Sure. So we call it the Flathead Tourism Communications Meeting. And then depending on the time of year, particularly in the summer when Glacier National Park has an influx of visitors or we're curious about our wildfires, we'll up those meetings, but meet around once or twice a month. And some of those key partners that are actually in those meetings historically and some past, some present, ourselves, Discover Kalispell, Explore Whitefish, Western Montana's Glacier County, Visit Montana, Glacier National Park, Flathead National Forest, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, the DNRC, the County Office of Emergency Services would join during times of heightened crises, as well as other regional national forest ranger districts, depending on our wildfire situations.
And so how often do those meetings happen?
We shoot for at least a month. Of course, that's a long list of folks and everybody's busy. But again, like I said, that they're definitely ramped up in the summertime as we need to stay close to any, issues that we might be having with the park might be having. Again, and particularly like we had mentioned in our pre-call, the fire season as well for us. And that's because not only is it about where the fires actually are, but it's communicating to our visitors, right? If you see a fire restriction or an air quality message that they don't know what that means. What does that mean? Does that mean I can still take my vacation? Just making sure that, we have the proper information from our partners to then go ahead and be that voice for them, to either answer those questions for the visitors that might be concerned with some of our natural elements. So.
Great. Can you give me an example in some of those meetings? And the reason I'm asking this question is because I've been a part of a lot of these stakeholder meetings, and sometimes there's that one kind of wild card that shows up and has a tendency to derail the meeting, and then you go down a rabbit hole and it's hard to get it back, right? So how do you guys go in and make sure that you've got the right people kind of on the same page so that that meeting goes well and doesn't turn into kind of a debate instead of an informative session?
Sure. I will say that I have just been blown away by the collaboration of this valley. I would say the flow of the meeting is typically, hey, what's new with you? What is relevant to this group? And I think everybody does a good job of honoring that. And there's going to be inherently some meetings where the park might need to take up a majority of it, right? Or we have a new fishing restriction that, oh my gosh, this is dropping soon, and we want to discuss, what is the most efficient way to share out this information. So I would say that the folks on that call truly do an amazing job of not only speaking but also listening to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of value, when it comes to just listening from your partners as well.
Awesome. Awesome. And I know that you can't divulge everything about this project because it's still in creation, but you talked about how you've got a photographer that you've partnered with, a local photographer that you're building a pretty exciting project with.
Yeah, we are very excited to partner with Forrest Mankins. We feel so blessed to have such a talented individual located right here in the Valley. And a lot of, even on some of the podcasts I've listened to with you and webinars that I've joined of your own, there seems to be this trend that folks really are resonating more with more of that storytelling vibe, right? Something that feels a little bit more organic and authentic. And as we had mentioned, really authenticity is one of the core values of Kalispell and the folks that lived here and multi-generational Montanans and really telling their stories. So through this video photo project with Forrest, he will be going, and we're calling it Rediscovering Kalispell through his lens. And so we kicked it off. We kicked off the project, but really his focus is on telling some of the stories of the people here in the Valley and kind of asking them what keeps you in Kalispell and what do you think brings people and attracts people to Kalispell. So we have some really interesting stuff in the works for winter, not to give too much away, but we did want to kind of tap on some of these unsung heroes and who are the people that are making those real winter magical moments in Montana happen. So, you might see some things with some firewood as well as some groomers. So we're super excited to kind of highlight some of our awesome individuals in our community that are making these wonderful experiences for our visitors a possibility.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to see that come out. I think that's going to be a really fun series. And I love that you partnered with this local creator, right? Somebody that, if I'm understanding correctly, already has a pretty healthy audience that when he distributes it, there's going to be plenty of reach there. And then you can amplify with the reach that the destination has as well. I think it sounds like a really great partnership, and it's going to add to the authenticity of the piece.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. Again, like I said, we feel very blessed, but even some of his past partnerships were super inspiring to see. So it's always great when it just feels like a really natural fit in that sense.
Awesome. Well, Natalie, what haven't I asked you that you think would be beneficial for our audience to hear?
To backtrack a little bit in terms of some of our collaborative nature in the Valley, I did want to touch on how great it has been to see. And again, as someone new to the DMO world and some of these flathead communication meetings, I'm more of a fly on the wall and soaking in the knowledge. But as we've kind of seen some of our vehicle reservation systems change throughout the years in the park, and how, it's even somebody from back in high school, I get a text message being like, okay, so what exactly does this mean? And as the first system was implemented in 2022 and has small changes, and even for the first time in 2025, it'll be a timed entry. I've felt pretty inspired by how much goes into those decisions and knowing that at the root, they really are for the visitor and how we can best share that information, because it absolutely can be a bit complicated. So just, I guess, a shout out to, again, the collaborativeness of the Valley and the work that they're doing to kind of make the park accessible for everyone.
I love that. I don't believe that a destination can truly make impactful change without having a coalition of people to make sure that their ideas are able to get approved and get through and keep everybody on the same page. And it sounds like you've done a really good job of fostering that community.
Yeah, I like to think so.
Great. Natalie, this has been really fun, and I actually would love to have you come back when you're done with this owned media series that you're putting together with, I'm sorry, what was his name, the photographer?
Forrest Mankins.
Forest. It's funny because the word Boris was in my head, and I was like, "There's no way you said
Right.
Boris." Anyway, okay. So when Forest puts that together, I'm really excited to see. I would love to maybe do a follow-up episode where we actually show some of the imagery on the screen and do a little bit more in-depth analysis of that project.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be happy to.
Awesome. Well, in the meantime, Natalie, if people want to get to know you or learn more about Discover Kalispell, what's the best way for them to do so?
I would urge you to definitely visit our Instagram or Facebook handles. You can find us at Discover Kalispell. And again, as always, our website, which will be dropping our 2025 visitor guide soon. So definitely feel free to put in a request for a digital or physical copy. We'd love to send you some more information about our wonderful destination.
I love it. Natalie, thank you again for coming on and sharing your experience and some of these cool projects you're working on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Adam. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. And thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to leave us a rating or a review. And some of you hear that every time, but we don't have enough ratings or reviews yet based on our audience. So please take the time. Go leave us a rating or a review. It really helps us continue to bring you amazing guests like Natalie. Thanks everybody, and have a great week.